Hey guys, welcome back to For StarCraft 2 Strategy, your #1 location for step-by-step strategy and tutorial videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Protoss strategy. Basically this is going to be how to respond to a Terran opponent going for early game mass Marines, and then how to transition from that point. So again, this is a Protoss versus Terran strategy. In this particular game, our Terran player is NTT and the Protoss player is the infamous White Raw. So we're going to be starting off with a standard opening, obviously. You don't come up with a counter. You don't start the game with a counter to a strategy that your opponents, you're not even sure that they're doing. As I've said before, you're only going to go for certain strategies or do certain responses once you get that scouting information and once you know what's going on. So again, basically what we're going to be seeing in this game is our Terran opponent is going to be going for some early game Marine pressure, trying to pump out a bunch of Marines, trying to get some bunkers into our base, and kind of basically trying to take us out early. We're going to respond to that by trying to get Stalkers out as quickly as possible. Upgrading that warp gate research so we can get some warp gates out, and then basically working with blink stalkers and some immortals to counter any marauders that he's likely to be getting eventually. So taking a look back here at the base, we went ahead and we dropped that gateway at 12. I'm going to keep the production tab up just so you guys can keep an eye on what's going on while I go off into my banters about certain aspects of the strategy. I don't want you guys to miss anything. So if you're wondering about build timing, well, when you see a building pop up, just go ahead and look at the supply at that point, and that'll give you a good idea as to what you're looking to do. So we are moving out with that scout, of course, getting that vital information. So very important. Always make sure every single game that you send out the scouts, there's no reason ever not to scout, because if you don't know what your opponent's doing, you're not going to know how to respond. So what we're seeing here, we're moving in, we see this one bunker, we see something coming out of the barracks. Now with no tech lab, that means it's a Marine. That's the only thing it could be. Also, and possibly the most important thing that we're seeing, the most vital thing that we're seeing, is a lack of refineries. There are 0 refineries, there's an orbital command coming in. This tells us almost certainly that he's going to be going for a mass Marine build, or that he plans to expand very, very early. Now expanding very, very early isn't really the smartest idea versus a player who's been scouting you, because if they know what they're doing, when you expand early, they're going to hit you with just a handful of units, and you're not going to have enough to stop it. So at that point, again, we can kind of assume that our opponent's going to be going for this kind of mass Marine build. And taking a look back at our base, as you can see, our opponent did move in a couple of SCVs trying to build this bunker up. We'd be in a lot of trouble if this bunker got up, so we're trying to keep the harass on the SCVs, stop him from building it. He does go ahead and cancel that bunker because he realizes it wasn't going up. Now at this point we are in a little bit of a bind. We haven't dropped our Cybernetics Core yet, we're just dropping it right now. That Assimilator is up, it's not saturated though. We don't quite need those Vespians yet at the moment, we're just okay with the minerals. But we're in a little bit of a bind because if you're facing a Terran opponent who even has the slightest idea of how to micro, a Zealot will never catch them. Up until the point that your Zealots have charge researched, there is no reason that a Terran player should let a Zealot catch a Marine. There's no reason for it to happen. They basically have to let you get up to the Marine. They have to want you to do it, or just not be paying enough attention. Like as you can see there, had he just pulled it back a second later, that Marine wouldn't even got hit. I mean, it's not a big deal, the Marine didn't die or anything, but he could have avoided getting hit altogether. So again, we're kind of in a bind up until the point that we get this Cybernetics Core up. Now once we get the Cybernetics Core up, Stalkers do very well against Marines, especially early game when the numbers are a little even. Once the Marines start to outnumber the Stalkers, then it can get a little hairy, but early on in the game, Stalkers are very, very strong versus Marines. And again, it can get a little scary once they have stim pack, but we're not having to deal with that at this point, so we're okay with the Stalkers to face the Marines. A Cybernetics Core is finally up, obviously, so we are pumping out the Stalkers. First one out, we're going to be coming out with another one shortly as well. And now at this point, we're kind of making an intuitive leap, but this isn't a unwise decision by getting this Robotics Facility. Basically, the situation we're in here, here we are, we're having these two simulators saturated, so we have enough Vespian to do whatever we want as far as tech's concerned. But we're kind of in a position here where we know that he has mass Marines. We've seen this massive amount of Marines. That tells us that he's got at least 2 or 3 barracks aside from this additional one, because to produce these many Marines this early, you kind of need a few barracks. And so the likelihood of him transitioning into tanks or transitioning into Banshees and Vikings is very small. He is likely to stick with a bio build, transitioning eventually into Marauders, simply because he's vested so many resources in these barracks already. It really wouldn't make much sense for him to just completely diverge from that. So kind of going with that intuitive leap, assuming that we're going to be seeing Marauders eventually. We did drop that Robotics Facility, and we're going to be coming out with Immortals at some point. So again, we're dropping these 2 gateways right when our Cybernetics Core is about 3/4 of the way finished researching this warp gate research. And what that's going to do is basically, as soon as that warp gate research is done, these 2 gateways are going to be up. We're going to be able to turn all 3 into warp gates, and then we're going to be able to mass pump out Stalkers to deal with this Marine threat. So taking a look back at the Terran opponent's base, again, still going out with his Marines. He's being steadfast with this strategy, definitely sticking with it here. My computer's freezing, but I'm going to keep going because it's like the 3rd time it's happened tonight. I need a new computer really bad. If any of you guys want to donate me like $1,000 so I can buy a new computer, that'd be greatly appreciated, because it's very frustrating to be mid-cast and have a computer freeze on me here. And there we go again. Okay, so taking a look here back at the base, those 3 warp gates are finally up. We did chrono boost out here this Immortal. I'm not quite needing it yet because Immortals are not very good against Marines. But again, once we see those Marauders come out, that's when it's going to be put to good use. So up until that point, we're just going to try to play it safe with this Immortal. Obviously, we can still have him attack, but we do want to be careful that the Marines don't target fire him, because they will take him down very fast. He doesn't do very well against Marines at all. So again, we're just keeping up with these Stalkers here, trying to keep pumping them out, coming out with now we're coming out with a Warp Prism. Now what this is going to allow us to do is get some good scouting in his base. Basically, by going to the edge of his base, we're going to be able to snipe buildings down or whatever. We're going to be able to snipe down this front wall just from getting that vision from up high. It's also going to allow us, of course, to drop in units if we choose, but more importantly, we're going to be researching Blink from the Twilight Council once this comes up, and once Blink is done researching, we're going to be able to blink in units. So we're going to use our observer as well as this Warp Prism to get vision up high and to blink in units into his base, because he's going to be vulnerable until he switches into Marauders, and all we've seen thus far are those Marines. And again, now that we're starting to get those Stalker numbers up, basically the tables are turned. Things are looking in our favor at this point, because again, like I said before, once the Stalker numbers start to match the Marines, then it's really kind of a grim sight for the Terran player. So we're just going to be keeping an eye on this, trying to put some pressure on as much as possible. Here we are with that sight like I was talking about, able to shoot the edge of his base, get any buildings. We would have been normally picking off this front wall, but we saw this great opportunity because he did have all these barracks sitting right there. In fact, going to be warping in some Stalkers right inside of his base, try to do as much damage as possible. No blink yet, so these Stalkers are unfortunately going to be sacrificed to these Marines. That's okay, we're still in this base, we're still doing this damage here. At this point, the Terran player is kind of in panic mode. He's finally getting these 2 tech labs, like we assumed here. Here comes that Marauder switch. I'm going to be researching Stim Pack, as well as researching the shields there. So actually, I guess I was false. There we go, there are the Marauders, okay. If he kept on going with those straight Marines, he would have been in a lot of trouble. He definitely needs Marauders to deal with this heavy Stalker force, so that's exactly what we're going to be seeing here. Now, Blink still isn't done being researched. It's coming in right now. Should be done shortly. There we go. And then once Blink is researched, it's definitely going to be looking good for the Protoss player. He's not going to be able to do much. We're getting vision here from this Warp Prism, as well as, I know we had an observer here somewhere. I'm not sure. I think it disappeared. Maybe they got rid of it. But finally, I mean, you can see the Terran players bringing up his workers. I mean, he's definitely getting overwhelmed at that point. If he's willing to sacrifice workers to defend against his base, you can definitely tell that he's in a vulnerable position at that point. Excellent placement with these bunkers, though. That's definitely going to help fend off any pressure, especially with that increased range when Marauders went inside the bunkers. But again, since we were able to push out there with Stalkers, again, once we got to that kind of critical mass versus Marines, we kind of have free reign at this point of the map. He's not going to be pushing out anytime soon. The forces that he has are not adequate enough to deal with what we're looking at here. We do have this 3 warp gate pressure, and we are also coming out with 2 additional gateways, so we're going to be looking at 5 warp gate Blink Stalkers coming out, and that's going to be a little too much for him to handle. But again, because we were able to put him on the defensive, hitting with that counterattack with those Stalkers, putting him on the defensive, that's going to allow you to expand, and basically at this point you're looking at full map control, and that's definitely a spot you want to be in. So as you can see here, we're going to be moving this observer up, getting a good scout of the base, seeing exactly what's going on. And still not that much, and you may wonder, well, is this Terran player awful? No, by no means he's not awful. Pretty solid player, NTT, definitely a good player. In many cases can match White Raw, not in this particular game, of course, but basically, you know, going in for that all-in strategy, you lose so many Marines, that's what you end up spending all of your resources in. it's kind of like an all or nothing choice. Unless he were to back off, play a little defensively, put up some bunkers here, and maybe expand, but he obviously didn't do that. But that's kind of the only way that he'd be able to switch out of this, because he takes such a hit in econ simply because those Marines do drop so fast, especially once the Stalkers mass up, like I said. Now taking a look here back at the base, those 5 warp gates are finally up. So now our Stalker production is definitely going to be through the roof. We're just going to be able to constantly warp things in, and with this extra resource advantage from this expansion here, things are definitely looking up for us. So the Terran player kind of realizes he's on the fritz here. His mineral fields are, they're dwindling down. He doesn't have too much left. At this point, he kind of thinks, well, I kind of have to push out now. Wait until he got that ghost up for EMP. And basically, he's at the point where if this push doesn't work, especially with us having this expansion up, he's not going to be able to do much at that point. Fully utilizing this observer, blinking Stalkers into his base as he pushes out, basically forcing him to make the decision: do I go straight for his base, or I turn back and try to fight these Stalkers? And that's a very strong strategy that you can implement in almost all of your games. Counterattacking your opponent, moving into their base when they're moving out to your base, and then putting them in the tough position of, okay, well, do I go back to defend my base, or do I keep pushing to their base and try to take them out? And basically what this does for you is it buys you time. It allows you to build more units, get some defenses up, prepare for the upcoming attack, and it just pushes them off their game. Again, he had to pull back to defend against that, so otherwise he would have been up at our base attacking right now. Also, in this particular position, it was very good for us because we forced him to use a stim pack on the Stalkers that we had in his base, and without any medevacs, stim pack's very damaging. He's moving up right now, and since he has no medevacs, he's, some of these Marines are sitting at 15 health, other ones at 45. Taking that damage from the stim pack, it's going to put them in a vulnerable position as opposed to us having Stalkers here at full health, full shields. As you can see, stim packing again, dropping his Marines even lower, and then now the Stalkers are just going to completely mop the floor with them. These Immortals, of course, doing massive damage to the Marauders, and that's it. End of the game right there. So a lot of stuff going on in this game. Just going to do a quick overview. Starting the game off with that standard Protoss opener, getting that 9 Pylon, followed by the 10 Gateway. As the Gateway's building, we got that Assimilator. Now we got that scouting information. Again, what we saw was that 1 supply depot, the barracks, an orbital command, and no refineries. Again, if you see no refineries early on versus a Terran opponent, one of 2 things are going to be happening. They're going to be hitting you early game with a ton of Marines, or they plan on expanding fast. So if they plan on expanding fast, basically you want to mass a small little task force and go out and hit them quickly, because they're going to waste so many resources on that expansion. But if they're going to be hitting you with this early game Marine pressure and trying to build some bunkers in your base, well, what you want to do is, of course, stop that bunker from being built, kill the worker, and then try to get some Stalkers as quickly as possible to deal with those Marines. And then transitioning from there into the warp gates, getting the Robotics Facility to deal with any possible Marauders, and then eventually we're going to be getting that blink to add to maximum harass, providing us with the ability to do counterattacks, forcing him to pull his units back, all sorts of stuff. Blink Stalker is very, very effective versus this bio ball. You can even pull back units as they get low with Blink, all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, guys, this is basically, we've been taking a look here at how to respond to a Terran opponent who's going for mass Marines transitioning into Marauders. So this is a very effective response to that. Try to implement it in your games if you do see that specific situation, if you do see those mass Marines coming. And yeah, guys, again, this has been a StarCraft 2 strategy, your #1 location for step-by-step strategy and tutorial videos. If you guys like our videos and you like what you see here, please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys.